Hi
Stop, we're
there.
live. Hey everybody, it's Mike from Here to Watch. Today's episode of the Watchman's Report, I am so excited to have none other than Josh Tolley. He's the host of the Josh Tolley Show, and if you're not following his show, you got to follow it because he has more viewers on his show and on his YouTube channel than America's Got Talent has to their show. So, I mean, the man's incredible. He changes lives. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Mike, it's great being here with you. And, it's when it comes to that show, it's so interesting. The show's growth is happening so fast. And then, of course, the book, too, Evangelpreneur, has been #1 on Amazon over the weekend again. So that's the third time this book has hit #1. People are buying it by the case. It's just amazing what we're seeing happen both with the books and with the show. And it's always an honor to be on with you, especially when we get to talk about the next Hear the Watchman conference.
Well, you know, Josh, I'll tell you what, people should buy your book because your book is life-changing. Bottom line, it is life-changing. And, you know, we have a couple that's dear friends with us, Chance and Merrill, from American Survival Wholesale, who came to one of your Purple Monkey University seminars. And I'm telling you what, fire with everything he learned after attending that seminar. So thank you for that. Thank you for changing his life and all the lives that you change.
Oh man, it's God. It's not me. I'm just, a tool that God decides to use. But, it was funny when they came through the course. We do this 2-day business of life course, and he came through it. And he's got an MBA. And he's like, man, they didn't teach me any of this stuff in business school. And I'm like, well, exactly, which is why we're helping so many businesses. So, yeah, it's an honor to do it.
Well, now, Josh, we're going to see each other. We're going to see you and your lovely wife, Brittany, here in about 30 days. At the Hear the Watchman conference in Boise, Idaho. But before we get going there, I gotta share a little something with our audience. You'll see my shirt here. Cool. And then I want to show you this right here. Let's see if you can all see that. Guns and Guts Made America Free. Let's keep it that way. You know what? My stepdaughter, for us. My stepdaughter gave me this shirt. My stepdaughter gave us that plaque. Maybe we're changing her mind about things. She's 20 years old and going to the University of Santa Barbara. Liberal as liberal can be. But maybe we're changing her mind, or maybe she's just getting sympathetic to our cause. I don't know, but I'll take it any way I can get it.
One step is one step. Don't argue about what the step is. Just come on over. Because what's going to happen is next time she buys a shirt like that for you, somebody's going to criticize her, and then she's going to say, hey, wait a second, that's the very thing they said was going to happen, thus proving you guys right. And so it's going to happen, man. She's coming over to the light side.
Well, I think a light bulb went on maybe, but anyway, so Josh, you have a very interesting topic. I love your topic, and this is the Hear the Watchman conference in Boise, Idaho, the Sign in the Heavenlies, the Redemption Convention. Folks, August through the 20th, Riverside Hotel, Boise, Idaho. Get there. If you can't, you'll want to watch it on the live stream. And Josh has a promo code. It's Tolley. I'll double check and I'll send it out there to all you guys. But Tolley 20, and that'll get you $20 off a ticket to the actual event. And it will also get you 20% off the live stream, which we're posting this year on Vimeo. And you will be able to watch the conference for 6 months. 6 months for $39. $39, Josh. That's all it is. And 6 months of viewing, you can study, you can learn everything about all the speakers and just really take in what they're saying during these incredible times. Plus, we are actually going to do footage of the total eclipse of the sun on the 21st. So you get all of that. Beat that. So Josh, talk to us what your topic, tell us your topic, and talk to us about what it means to you.
Well, I'm going to cover a couple things, but it's going to be based around why they don't believe. You know, I have this new book coming out called Why They Don't Believe. It's something that's always been asked of me. You know, whenever I speak at a conference, people say, well, I've tried to talk to my husband or my daughter or my son or whatever. Why don't they believe in God? And really, over the past 21 years of talking to groups of people, I've started realizing that there are a bunch of excuses people give for not believing in God, and then there's the real reasons. And the excuses are things like, oh, well, God's mean, or why would God let a bus full of kids die, or, well, science has proven, or whatever. And these are not really valid reasons. They're logically flawed. They hold no water at all. So I started digging, and I started thinking, well, if these arguments are terrible, if these excuses are just that, excuses, then what are the real reasons people don't believe in God? And that's what I'm going to talk about at the conference. There's only 4 reasons people don't believe in God, 4 and 4 alone, and I'm going to cover those at this here, The Watchman.
Man, that is awesome. I mean, and that is so relevant to what's going on in the world today, Josh. I mean, gears here, and now we're going to talk about something super controversial. There is a magazine, Teen Vogue, and you know, there's a woman out there on the internet right now who's really doing a wonderful job. I forget her, like the survival mom, I think her name is. And she's doing a wonderful job of trying to shut this down. But Teen Vogue, which addresses young girls, obviously in their teens, I think their audience is like 11 to 16. I can't believe what they did this week. And now I guess nowadays, I mean, maybe boys get this magazine too. When I was younger, I was thrilled to death to get Boys Life and Sports Illustrated. But now today, who knows what goes on. But this article was to be there for young girls and for transgender, or I don't know what I am, kids today. And what it is, this is going to get a little touchy here. It's a guide to anal sex. They're teaching young girls that anal sex is fine, that it's natural, that it's the way to go. And Josh, I guess where I want to go with this, without getting into the nitty gritty about this article, is this is a sign to me of the degradation of society today, that a magazine, young girls, or whatever their audience is, target them with this information and say that this is a natural act, that God's okay with this, that this is the way we should live our lives today. What's your read on that?
Well, it just kind of goes to show where we've been heading and where this train is continually going. You know, it's not the only controversial article they've had this week either. And Teen Vogue is really trying to lower the bar when it comes to how immoral we can become. What amazes me, Mike, is that you have all this talk about, you know, we have to educate our young girls about sex, and it's not just Teen Vogue. I mean, we have to remember that Planned Parenthood and the Girl Scouts of America recently paired up, and they gave out guides at a conference talking about how to sexually please your partner. I don't remember that merit badge when I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. There wasn't a marriage badge about sexually pleasing your partner. And the reality here is that they're taking sex and they're turning it into a tool to destroy children. It's being sold as, well, we need to do this for our kids to help build them up, to educate them. And come on. I mean, we've gone how many thousands of years without Teen Vogue? I don't think Teen Vogue is going to be the deciding factor as to whether the human species continues or not. And we can talk about that in a second, actually, because they're actually having a negative effect. But when you look at this topic, what are they really trying to accomplish? They are trying to turn children into victims. And they're trying to turn children into victims. Because when you think about everything that comes along with this, it's not just going to be anal sex. It's going to be sexting. It's going to be oral pleasure. It's going to be all the other articles that Teen Vogue gets into that really just turns kids into victims of the, I guess, the satanic agenda, if you really want to dig into it. And when you think about who's reading this, you have to say to yourself, why? Why would an 11 to 16-year-old need to know anything about anal sex? I mean, why is this even a thing? Are they encouraging it? And the big red flag to me is, notice how, back in the 90s when I was in school, it was handing out free condoms, and parents had a fit for about an hour. So parents had a fit for about an hour. Oh, they're handing out free condoms in school. And then it turned into all the parents saying, well, now that I think about it, that's a pretty good thing. And then it turned into teaching kids how to put the condom on. And that was a big hubbub for a little bit. Put it on a banana. And parents had a fit for about an hour. And then it turned into, well, that's a pretty good thing. So if we've noticed, we can't blame Teen Vogue for what they've done this week when we look at what we've allowed to happen over the past 15 years. What Teen Vogue has done this week is a natural consequence of us not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that's taking this back. Now, in addition to that, why do we always teach about sex and we don't talk about love? Where is the love education? Why is it always sex ed? Why is it not love ed? And why are we always separating the two? Sex has now become something that's a hobby. It's just as benign as yoga practice or something. At least that's what they're teaching the kids. So the kids will engage in these acts and essentially damage their soul while their body thinks, there's no big deal to it. There's nothing here to see at all. And what is so alarming about this, too, is it's just part of the stew of confusion. So at the same time that we're having all this sex ed, we're being taught that there is no such thing as gender. We're taught that there is no such thing as sexually objectifying somebody. At the same time that we're taught that you're supposed to sexually objectify. And it's just this massive, confusing, just pot of nastiness. But think about this, Mike. And I covered the Teen Vogue thing on my show this week, and I paired it with this. As much as we love to complain and say, look at what Teen Vogue has done, how many Christian dads take their daughters to the church swim thing in a bikini? Well, wait a second. Wait. Here we are at a time in human history where a bikini is now considered socially acceptable at the church swimming pool. Well, I don't know if many of your viewers know this, but when the guy who invented the bikini first invented this thing, he had to get whores in order to model it, because normal models wouldn't model this, because they were considering it, wait a second, isn't that just underwear you get wet in? Well, yeah, it's underwear you get wet in. So if you wouldn't want your daughter leaving the house in her underwear, if you wouldn't want your wife leaving the house in her underwear, why would you send her out into the world in waterproof underwear? Then we get upset that, oh, well, some man is looking at my wife or daughter. You think? She's in her underwear. How is that not going to get looked at? And then it turns into blame the man for doing what God created the man to do, which was to respond to a sexual image, because that sexual image was only supposed to come from his wife. So here's how we flipped it. The man has now become bad for living God's design, and the women have become acceptable for going against God's design. So then you extrapolate that out, and of course Teen Vogue is exactly where we would expect it to be, because Christians are just one notch above where Teen Vogue is. It's interesting how Christianity continues to spiral down that sexual perversion gutter, just a little bit behind the rest of the world. Where are the churches that are opposed to bikinis? Well, how many Christian dads are taking their daughters, their 9-year-old daughters, to Walmart to get swimwear, and it's a bikini? So how much complaining can we really do before we have to look at the plank in our own eye?
Well, you know, Josh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think largely Christian men are asleep. And you and I have talked about this. Not you and I. You and I grew up in a different time where, you know, we were taught to stand up for what we believe in, to you know, if you had to fight for it. I'm not suggesting anybody go out there and get in a fight. You had to fight for it, you fought for it, you know, and you stood your ground. I mean, there was a line in the sand and people didn't cross that line. But today, with men, specifically the young boys in the country, you know, we've got this whole thing about this gender issue and the, you know, the same-sex bathrooms and all of this stuff. And I can't help but think, Josh, and I want you to, you know, pipe in on it. Can't help but think that society as a whole today is trying to neuter our young men. I mean, you know, I witnessed this in California, where my stepson was in a soccer league there. First meeting when he was going to play soccer, and the coach came out and he said, everybody here's a winner. Everybody here is going to play. Every team, no matter whether we're first or last, is going to get a trophy and a ribbon. And I thought to myself, what is that all about? I mean, you know, come on, guys. I mean, you know, when I grew up, you had to try out for the team. And if you didn't make the team, you were disappointed. Which you went back and you practiced and practiced and practiced until you could make that team. But today, everybody's one big team under that rainbow. And where's it leading us, Josh?
Well, it's leading us to where churches are. Yeah, it's so crazy. Today on the show, I covered two things. One was a woman who has 2 sons, and she is telling the world that her sons, because they're males, are unsafe. Just because they're males. And males have a tendency to live in rape culture. They tend to be chauvinistic and misogynistic. So even her sons, she's warning the world, I'm sorry I had boys. They're going to be a danger to the world. So there is an attack on manhood. And it leads to what you were talking about. What do you do when there's too many males? You neuter them. And that's what's been happening now. And now it's the same in churches. Churches are neutered. This is why real men tend to stay out of typical American churches, because they have these weak little men's groups and, you know, make sure we're doing prayer breakfast on Tuesday with the men and we're going to uplift the men. Well, where are the men in those prayer groups that would have stormed a wall, that would have chopped off the head of an adversary, that would have bled in order to protect the women? They're not there, which is why a lot of men are no longer in churches. But now we're just running out of men, period, which is why things like Hear the Watchman are so important, because I know you guys stand up for traditional gender roles. And what was amazing is when we did the last Hear the Watchman and we did that marriage council or that marriage panel, it was so enlightening and encouraging to all the people in the audience that saw, hey, wait a second, women statistically are happier when they're women, and men are statistically happier when they're men, and they are way more happier with each other when they are with each other as a man and a woman. And we need to get back to that place. See, part of the problem is when we say, where are the men? And society has neutered them. Where are the men fighting back? Where are the men saying, yeah, you know what? You can cry all you want. I'm not moving. Where are the men saying, well, I'm just going to teach my son that some people win and some people lose? Where are the men who are going to these courthouses and saying, hey, the next time you pass a bill that says it's illegal to spank my child, I'm going to spank you? You know, where are those men? Because the only reason society is going the direction it's going is because men are not standing up to do anything. And it's sick. I mean, we can't count on Republicans The Republicans have basically turned out worse than Obama as of July 17, 2017. We can't count on Christians. This past election cycle, most churches that we visited said that they don't want to talk about politics because it might upset their congregation. We can't talk about anything of importance, and they've made us very benign. In order to exist in today's society, you have to be benign. You can't believe in anything. You can't stand up for anything. You can't voice your opinion on anything, because as soon as you do, you're a hater, you're bigoted, you're sexist, you're xenophobic, you're whatever. Well, I think it's time that we say, hey, you know what? Call me whatever you want, because I would rather be loved by God and hated by the world than loved by the world and hated by God. And that's the decision we need to start making.
Amen to that. You know, Josh, I've met your dad. He is a lot like my dad. My dad, who he was a World War II veteran, and he fought in the Pacific. Horrible stuff. When he came home, he raised me, and I remember him saying, and today he'd probably get for saying this, but he used to say, if you don't stop crying, I'll really give you something to cry about. Now, he wasn't telling me feelings. He wasn't saying, oh, stuff your feelings, you can't feel. What he was saying was, be a man. You know, and I think in today's world, we're so messed up where we're like, oh, did you fall down and skin your knee? Well, let me get a medevac for you. You know, let's get the SWAT team out here. I mean, it's crazy stuff. I remember once coming home. I had been where I shouldn't have been, where I'd been told not to be, and riding my bike. And it was actually at a hospital. And we used to go down this ramp and we'd jump over the speed bumps, because back then, you know, boys were boys, and you did stuff like that. And I fell off my bike. I had gotten a new watch for my birthday, and I took one hand and held my watch and went over this speed bump one-handed and fell down. I broke my arm. So what did I do? We walked home, and it was like maybe a mile or so to get home. We walked home. I went in the house, and my mom and dad were still in bed, and I went in there, and my dad looked at my arm, and he said, you broke your arm. And I said, yeah, I think I might have. And he goes, okay, let's get together and go to the hospital. And said to him, well, I was at the hospital. That's where I broke it. And he looked at me and he shook his head and he just said, we're going to the hospital and getting your arm fixed. But what he didn't do, say, oh, my little honey, oh, my little baby, let me take care of you and coddle you. It was like, no, suck it up. We're going to the hospital. You're going to get your arm put in a cast and you're going to deal with it. Fortunately, today, goes back to the Bible. I mean, if you look in the Bible teaches that men will be men and women will be women. Now, I'm not saying what that means is that women have to be submissive. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you're a man and you're listening to this cast today, what you need to do is you need to stand up and you need to be the leader in your house spiritually, financially, emotionally. You need to be the rock. You know, it's kind of like this. Okay, so if you're the man, you're like the big umbrella. When all the stuff starts raining down, you're the one with the umbrella up there that shelters your wife and your children from all the stuff that's coming down. But it doesn't mean that you tell them, oh, don't worry about anything. I mean, you're all a winner. I mean, where do you read in on this, Josh?
Well, you know, I think it's fairly interesting. You brought up the Bible, and the Bible says that men are to be men, women are to be women. I can guarantee you that God is not going to change his mind on winner and losers. I guarantee you that God's not going to say, well, everybody gets first place prize. That's not how God works. God is not swayed by liberal progressives in the Western world. He's going to maintain his standard. Now you have to ask yourself, if I say that I believe in the God of the Bible, am I maintaining God's standard, or am I trying to live according to society's? But that leads to another pretty big point that I think you touched on there, Mike. And it's this idea that somehow we can survive as a society and not have men. And look, I understand that topics like finding giants and are the Nephilim descending upon my house at midnight, and the hidden message in, the saran wrap around the Twinkie might contain a code. Fascinating messages. I love this stuff too, which is why I have those topics on the show from time to time. I get it. I really do. But what sense is it if you're worried about Nephilim attacking your poodle in the middle of the night someday, when this threat is real? This is a real threat. This is what you're supposed to be prepping for. If you've been asking yourself, well, what am I getting ready for? This is it. This video should have 20 million views, because this is the threat that's tearing down your family. It's not coming someday somewhere, oh, I don't understand which prophecy. This is happening today. By the time Mike and I finish this conversation, your family is going to be affected by this push against manhood, because it's a constant 24/7 push. And it's very disheartening to hear people talk about, well, I'm preparing for XYZ. Well, this is what you were supposed to prepare for. Are you fighting this or not? And if you're not fighting this, you're not going to stand a chance against Nephilim if you think they're coming. I don't care if it's silver bullets, brass bullets, copper bullets. It's 100% irrelevant if you're not even willing to stand up for what's between your legs. So this conversation is one that has to be out in the forefront, because other than that, you're just a fan of something, and the world has too many fans as it is.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. You're 100% right. I mean, we all talk about this prep for this, prep for that. It is, folks. It's happening right now, today.
Yep.
And Josh, when I grew up, not to keep bringing my dad up, but my dad said something to me that stuck with me my entire life, and I had actually struck out. I had struck out at a Little League game. Very crucial. Bases were loaded. We were down by 1. I was the last at bat, and I struck out. And I was completely depressed and upset about it. And, nobody came and put their arms around me. I mean, of course, they said, like, you tried. Don't worry about it. I got home. My dad looked at me, and he said, do you know what the difference between a winner and a loser is? And I was like, yeah, well, I'm a loser. I don't know, Dad. What's the difference? He said, the difference between a winner and a loser is when he loses and how he builds himself back up. So men in America, I think today, Josh, need to pick themselves up and say, we've lost, but now what did we learn? How do we bring it back? And how do we bring this whole thing around to change what's going on? Because we're in serious trouble here. Don't you agree?
Oh, we are in total trouble. When we are in, look. When you have men who want to sit back and do Netflix and chill and watch reruns of Sex and the City, as opposed to get out into the world and make a name for yourself. When you would rather read about, I don't know, some love story, and I'm not saying love stories are bad, that's not the point, but when you would rather do that than watch an action movie, when you're more interested in seeing if ESPN is going to cover the figure skating as opposed to the boxing match. And I'm just throwing out examples, but we are changing. We're changing because we've been taught that being a man is bad, that liking violence is bad, that liking adventure is bad, that wanting to kill the enemy and kill the dragon is somehow bad. And they've done this to us so they could keep the men weak. Anytime you take over a society, you have to take out the men first. That's just the way it goes. Well, we are in a very quiet war. The men are being gunned down. We're losing them left and right. And, you know, it's interesting. You told a story about your dad. I remember when I was in Boy Scouts, I burned my hands so bad, like they were just destroyed, both of them. And I had the option. I had the option of going home, or I had the option of getting bandaged up and toughing it out for another week at Boy Scout camp. And I remember my dad said that if you do not stay and just live through the pain, you're going to regret it. Because you're going to know that you gave up and you left and you didn't have to. And I stayed. And I stayed and I pushed through it, and it was well worth it, because what being a man is supposed to teach you to do, it's supposed to teach you to do that gut check. Because at the end of the day, if you're supposed to die for your family, you should already know what you're made of at that point. That's the wrong time to go through your first test. And that's why raising men used to be a process. That's why men used to take young men through a coming-of-age ceremony. You know, and it's not just American traditions. You have African tribes that used to put fire ants on a young man's back. Or, you know, the Aborigines, you'd have to go on your walkabout. You'd have to survive in the wilderness all on your own. And there were these things that made you step up and say, now look, you are now a man. You've passed through the test. You've made it through the fire. And God does that same exact thing. But for some reason, godly parents no longer do it, because we want to make sure everybody's safe. And even, I mean, think about it. Think about it. It goes even to our Constitution and our liberties. We are willing to get naked at the airport and say something totally stupid, like, well, I've got nothing to hide. Who cares? The point was your founding fathers shot people in the head for wanting to search their bags without a warrant. And we're like, well, I got nothing to hide as long as I'm safe. And we've determined that staying alive is the most important thing in life. Meanwhile, our founding fathers and every generation prior to us put staying alive somewhere around 50. There were 49 other things more important than staying alive. But today we've switched that. We've switched it for ourselves. We switched it with our children. And because of that, we have no purpose in life anymore. We are safe, but we wander through life constantly thinking, is this all life is? Well, no, that's not all life is, but we don't want to get out of our safety zone to go see what God has for life. And that's sad. It's sick. It's twisted. And that's why we have to continue to talk about this.
Well, you know, Josh, I mean, it's what amazes me, you know, when you and I grew up, and again, I'm not advocating fighting, folks, but, you know, boys fight. I mean, that's at least in my era, you know, you'd get in a schoolyard fight once in a while. And yeah, it was stupid. No one got hurt. No one would pull a gun out, you know, or a knife out back then. You'd just kind of go out there and slug it out for a little bit, and then you'd shake hands and you'd be best friends. But today, if there's a fight on the schoolyard, the whole SWAT team shows up. I mean, they send the cops out there. It's just a big, huge mess. And we need to let boys be boys. We need to let them be, you know, let them grow up to be boys, be boys. You know, my wife always says to me, you know, she says, one thing about you, you are certainly a real man. You know, I've rolled my four-wheeler down 250 yards on the side of a mountain. I slipped on the ice and almost broke my back. I mean, I get myself in trouble all the time. Why? Because I go out there and I try and do what I was trained to do, which is to be a man, get out there, get involved in it. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to fail. And there's nothing wrong with failing. What's wrong is if you fail, just giving up and like, oh, I give up. And, you know, I want to go now. Now, I don't want to be a boy anymore. I'm going to go get a dress and I'm going to be a transgender now because it's just too hard to be a boy. And as men in the church at least, Josh, we need to stand up and tell boys to be boys, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting. There was this, and it's not even just with humans. There's something about males. There was this not experiment, but this situation in Africa where in a wildlife preserve, they took out all the male bull elephants. And what was left in there, at least for the elephants, were females and their young, their offspring. Well, they noticed that the trees were starting to get knocked down. There were hippopotamuses that were just pummeled to death and murdered, like seriously. And the people were like, who's killing all these helpless animals? And they thought at first they were poachers, but the horns were still there on the rhinos. And so they were like, well, what's going on? So they set up cameras, and they discovered that the young elephants were destroying everything. They were just destroying stuff. They were knocking down trees for no reason. They were killing animals for no reason. And they're like, well, this is just crazy. We've never seen this before. So they put the male bull elephants back in the wildlife preserve. And those male bull elephants come in and kick some butt. They start telling these younger elephants, this ain't happening. They would knock them over. They'd hit them with the trunk. They'd, do whatever elephants do to kind of fight, And as soon as they let the males back in to do what males did, society and peace came back to the preserve for all animals. It came back for the giraffes. It came back for the hippos and the rhinos, because it allowed that godly design system of men being men to bring peace. And as much as people blame, like, oh, well, it's males that are the problem. It's males. This lady whose article I read today, she said, well, I'm sure progressive men, don't feel as bad at this, blah, 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 talking about rape culture. But if you were to really look at rape culture, and you were to go to a prison and ask the people who are convicted of rape, who did you vote for? It would be overwhelmingly the progressive candidate. So they're actually advocating for their own destruction. Who keeps the rapists at bay? The good men. It's the good men who go in and take care of the men who are being a little out of line. And we're starting to see this in Europe. So in Europe, in places like Sweden, Italy, Germany, France, Austria, Norway, Italy, Portugal, pretty much all of Europe, you're starting to see these rising gangs of Muslims, and along with the sexual assaults and the rapes and all that sort of stuff, rape up 700%, and it's terrible. Well, the government isn't doing anything, and Europe has kind of been demasculated over the past 150 years, but there are still some men left in the form of biker gangs and stuff like that. So now you have these biker gangs who are saying, you know what, enough's enough. We're not letting you rape the women anymore. So I'm not saying everybody should go be a vigilante, but I'm saying this is a great example of men being men returns peace to a nasty situation. Now the government needs to get out of the way. The social progressives need to get out of the way and let godly men come back into the forefront as godly men. How many Christians today would be laughed out of church by Christian forefathers? Notice how Peter had a sword on him, and he chopped off the ear of that guy, and he never got yelled at by Jesus for having the sword. Matter of fact, Jesus said now is not the time, which means there is a time. And we have kind of converted Jesus into this guy who holds a sheep in one hand and a little baby on the other knee, and we think that's Jesus. I'm sorry, that's not Jesus. That's some sort of kumbaya, let's all get together on top of a mountain, eat grape nuts sort of peace, brother, sort of situation. And that's what's got to change. We have to get back to manhood in the church.
Well, amen, Josh. And I wanted to, we're out of time today, but I want to thank you so much for the stand making and for everything that you do with your show. Folks, again, to just Google Josh Tolley and watch the Josh Tolley show, listen to his show, go to his YouTube channel. Amazing stuff. He's a real man of God. And Josh, looking forward to seeing you in just about 30 days in Boise, Idaho.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to see you guys. And I'm telling everybody, get to this conference. You never know. It might be the last one we have. Depends on how August and September goes. But seriously, get to this conference. If you can't get there, live stream this thing. Lives change because they hear the Watchmen conferences. I want to be a part of these for the next 40 years, Mike, so you got to keep doing these, man. I have seen the lives change just like you have. And if people are listening to this and they're on the fence, man up, woman up, get to the conference, and I'll see you there.
Awesome, Josh. And, you know, here's some breaking news that I'm going to say right here. Tolley is going to be the MC of the Watchmen Conference here in Boise, Idaho. He's not only is he a speaker, but he's going to be an MC, and he's an amazing MC. He's also going to have a separate breakout session. He can teach you how to change your life. And again, folks, that code that you need to know is Tolley20. Gets you $20 off per physical and 20% off that live stream months. $39. So don't miss out on this. Get involved, get in there. And again, Josh, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Mike. As always, thank you for being with us. And I think Jeannie might be coming on my show this week, so everybody tune in. She's always great when she's on the show. And I'll see you soon, man. God bless.
Thank you so much. So everybody, until we see you next time here on the Watchmen's Report, God bless each and every one of you. Stay informed. Don't be afraid. And you know what? Talk to you about today. Man up. And let's all go out and have a blessed week. And we'll talk to you again on the next Watchmen's Report. Thanks again. God bless each and every one of you.